What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to the biggest scam day of the year. The manipulation is crazy today, so let's get into it and talk about it. Excuse me. We were trading SPY today, and I got pretty lucky on a lot of the trades here today. I would have to say, definitely some very good management here, and these trades are the ones that separate the men from the boys. That's for absolutely sure. So let's look at this morning here. I was looking at short targets. We have a gap on futures in the history of my trading for 15 years almost now. I have never, ever seen an ES gap 1 minute ever not fill same day, ever. Ever. This never happened. So you see me say gap fill a ton all the time. I'm looking for gap fill, right? And especially on a 1 minute chart that leaves those algos open. So as this thing creeped up, we keep looking, right? Blasting the short at 10 SMA loop. We got the 10 SMA loop, and we were looking for a further downside to come back to that gap. And that is a typical play. This is a 100% accuracy trade. This is my favorite trade of any market condition. Now, this did not play out yet, and I don't know if it's going to or not, but we still snuck away with a decent day here. Now, I did $7,050 off one trade on ES. So let me bring up the old trade of 8 here. Look at our PA accounts. So yeah, PA accounts, all 6 accounts are at 1,000 or 1,175, something like that. Let me look here. Something like that. Yeah, so all 6 accounts are at 1175. Now, this is not something to be proud of in the slightest, in my opinion. So let's look at this trade. This is only one trade, and this is where big accounts and management happens, and this is why adding and averaging into your trades is so important, and knowing how to control your mentality for the trades. This is huge because this separates, like I said, the men from the boys. When you're coming into these trades, you can see my target stops. You can see this huge red line. I was in this trade from about 7 a.m. till almost 9 a.m. So 2 hours worth of one single day trade adding in. Okay. So I was starting on these tips, and I wanted to come back to this gap, right? Way back here on, you can't really see it. My fat head's in the way. Okay. Drawing tool just does not want to click over. There we go. So the gap down here, this gap right here was 497325, and this is the gap that I've never seen a 1 minute gap not fill ever. I mean, we got a couple hours left in the day, but that would be a lot to ask for. So on Twitter, I said this thing could scam up as high as 5K, but I want to see the downside. I want to see the gap fill and then go back to long. If you followed our YouTube and watched my last video, I called higher lows on the daily chart and a further break to all-time highs coming, right? And because we're collectively getting the daily chart stacking up those higher lows, riding the 10, and we had a whole bunch of oscillation indicators saying more scam up, right? So the Fed speaks today. We're even hawkish. Like Barker was coming out saying that, the inflation progress was a head fake. Market popped, snapped right back up. So let's talk about what indicators are scams. Let's get into this trade real quick, and I'll show you exactly what to look for when the market's manipulating like this. Now, this is one single trade round trip for me, adding in a couple back and forth contracts, bettering the average, and managing it professionally. 15 contracts total, 3 in and outs, but I held some of those contracts the entire time. So that is still one round trip for this entire trade. So you see these entries back here from 2 hours. Now I was getting in the short again, looking for that gap fill on the 1 minute on the way back down, because in precedent in 15 years, I've never seen one not fill. This is the first ever. So they are really changing up the algorithms and manipulating people on these force ups. And we've seen that and posted about it on X. We'll get into that after this trade. So with this long trade, look at the averages. Add, enter on the ES, popped against me. We're going like $2,800 to $3,000 red, but we have a huge cushion on these PA accounts. You notice I have over 10,300 here, and we're not stuck with the drawdown. So I'm not worried about any of that because of how far the cushion is. And that's what's a good thing about the PA accounts. And like my live account, I do trade with over 100,000 on NinjaTrader and more than that on Tastyworks, but utilizing these PA accounts, I got to be a little bit more careful with the cushion. But I was coming into this trade now negotiating a top pullback. So I was like, okay, this thing has to pull back. And I was telling the chat, looking for a confirmation. And you could we'll look at this at TOS in a minute. There was literally 100% confirmation of shorts, and the market said, no, thanks. We're just going to manipulate up and scam everybody, which does happen. So with all these entry points, I finally got the better average here. I finally seen the last exhaustion pop. And I said, my stop out, it was above 5K. And this trade I have live recorded. So I talk myself through this entire trade all the way to the end to make this $7,050. Link will be in the description if you want to look at that. But this is just a quick little recap here. You can see these are all the entry points. I finally got re-entered here, snapped down, and then came back up, covered some, snapped up here, again, sold, getting a better average, more selling right here. And then you can see my final out right here. Now I held that trade for 2 hours and a couple other ones on the ads right here. Ended up being green, but still one round trip that I'm not really proud of, because this gap is the first time in history I've ever seen anything like this. There has never been a gap on a 1 minute ES. Something that does irk me about this is the MES does not have this gap, right? So to be versatile, you need to be able to swap between MNQ, MES, NQ, everything back and forth. Hold on, what the heck? Oh, it automatically, this freaking platform sucks. Trade 08 is no fun for charting. But I did want to point out that this gap is filled on the MES. Okay, so ES has a gap, MES does not. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a big precedent. Usually they both gap, and all gaps do fill, especially in the intraday. So this is going to be the first time in history, as I said probably a million times now already, that this is a no fill so far. Now, again, unless a Fed speak comes on, which they tried to do already, they were hawkish on it. And I was hoping, as I posted on X here as well, that we were going to get a downside metric for that. And I have other shorts on that are red, about $700 right now, to get down back to this gap, which I'll be swinging and rolling because this will eventually come back down on the FOMO melt up. But the PA accounts are all clean off the one trade. So regardless, not a big deal on the round trip. So let's get into the scam indicators. I want to teach you guys how absolutely daunting this freaking scam was today. There we go. And show you what's going on with it. Now, you know the after hours algos, and you know how I use these a lot of the time. All the other prior videos go over this. You can check those out. We talk about the algorithms after hours. So I have a high-low algo right here. Okay, I took this on the 5-minute. High-low after hours algo, generally from earnings population. Algos go over the place. We've covered this multiple times. We have nothing but Fibonacci here, and we are clearing house at all-time high. So we have no weekly or daily resistance, right? So if you go to the 30-minute chart, nothing is up besides the last 30-minute high. This is it. That's all-time highs right here. So the fact that we were pushing up against all metrics, all algos, all everything all day, not respecting a single amount of pullback, let's get into why this was a scam and how manipulated this was today. So the crazy part was we never got a pullback to golden pocket, which is a big sign of force-up manipulation. We had opened and just came back down to the 78.60 fib here, okay? Now that caught up with a 666 back test, which never should have popped it in pre-market like that. That is not a catalyst. There are no Powells, no CPIs, no PPIs, no real data, no Fed speaks, no earnings, nothing that could have moved the market in this manner. 0% chance. There is not a single news piece for this. This is a pure algorithm manipulation scam, which is fine. We are still averaged it. We still came out ahead, huge green, 7,050, but still that just not the best trading sequence. So this Fibonacci, once we get to the 1618, we have a great possibility to come back down to the 100 to move to the 2618. That's how we stair step these Fibonaccis. Now, if you notice, we blew right through the 1618, blew right through the 2618, and I had to redraw the opening gap fib to see if we could get a little bit of resistance there. And that was it. So the opening wash, this is where I made all my money back here at the open, shorting this area back down to the 100 EMA back test. Because if you notice in the price action and pre, we slammed through every single thing and never back tested anything over or under the 100. So the 100 was the only back test. Now let's get into this. Snapped up over VWAP, purple dash, snapped over 100 EMA, green, snapped over 200, snapped over 666. All of these snapped over. They all require confirmational back testing, right? So all of these need back tests. This thing needs to flush. So at some point, we will see a market pullback. It might even be today. We might just jump off a cliff today and fall 40 points by the end of the day. That's still possible. Anything is possible in this market. So when the Fibonacci did not work, we melted through the 1618, melted through the 2618. We melted up all of these moving averages, right? And never came back still. So the only thing we have is VWAP back test here in purple, 100 EMA back test, never came back down to the 2. So I said to my chat, I said, stay short, and we're calling short from back here. Stay short till the 200 SMA catches up. We could finally get a fresh low back down to like the 100 fib. Because again, now we fibbed out the opening gap. Here's our box. Here's the golden pocket tag to the penny, and then went long. So the 1618 is your first pullback zone. What did it do? Well, it pulled back. But did it make it to target? No, we have a super high percent chance to come back to the 100 fib from the 1618. So once price action is into the 1618, it has a super high probability to come to the 100 fib and then come back up. That is a proper trade day. That is clean price movement. This is dumpster fire, trash algos, scamming you. But This is still tradable. So 200 SMA right here. I said, wait for this to catch up. That'll be the short. Did it short? Absolutely not. It had zero follow through and zero confirmation. All it had was a falling wedge breakout, held a double bottom at the 100 EMA again, just like it did last time, pushed up again, but no new highs. So again, looking really good for the short, right? Because we're still in sequence of a lower high. Highs, grouping, lower highs, lower low, still scammed you. And this is after 1030 algos. This is very historic for me. I have never witnessed anything like this at all in the history of my trading. And now that we have another force up here, and this is again off zero catalyst. I'm used to a CPI force up. I'm used to a Powell force up. Like that's no problem. But a zero catalyst, zero data, zero world news, zero everything force up. This is just a melt up on an algo scam. This is them clicking on the buy button and saying, nope, we're not going to let anything trade proper. So now let's get into the proper trades of this force up. What's left? Well, this thing has zero interest until it's magneted 500. I have two different Fibonacci points right now that stop at 500. So I'm assuming that this thing has enough juice to scam up to 500 maybe by the end of the week if it doesn't fall. And the only big question mark above my head is that ES gap that is open, because this should have just faltered. This should just panic down by the end of the day and just die. But it's not. it's still forcing up. And you can see some algos right there off some of the Fed speaks here on the minute chart. This is where Barkin was talking about bearish, saying the inflation is a head fake and it's garbage and is not under control. Still got bought up, still fresh highs. So this is a real market scam. It's really a beautiful thing to watch history like this. So let's talk about the indicators real quick on the end of the recap. This is the tall tale sign of a scam. Look at the pre-market. This is exactly what we covered yesterday too in the pre-market. We had zero reason to melt up right here. None. No catalyst, right? So let's look at the indicators here. Overhot, 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 backside histogram, heavy seller waves. This is all in the 1 minute, showing you that everything was overbought. So even on, now we can draw verticals for this too. No, we can't. All right. I thought that I was on TradingView for a second. So hot right here, hot right here, hot right here, hot right here, hot right here. And it finally did a small pullback there. Now notice you got scanned 1, 2, 3, 4 different time on indicators. You had double top rolls. You had histograms that were rolling up. You had a moving average you needed to back test, which is the 100. That's the one short we got, and that's the one I had to trade manage and be in and add into and average into. As you know, a professional in psychology, that was extremely hard even for me at 15 years of trading. But we made it. Now all of these scams right here, all those over hots, the market does not matter. Just melted up and then further did it again and again and again and again through the day on the 1 minute chart, because we're at all-time highs. We don't have any historic resistance to work off. We don't have a weekly candle to work off, daily, a gap. We are literally flying in no man's land. So the squeeze is up here, and how the indicators are going to react personality-wise might be a little bit different. So let's take a peek at it here again today. This was another one where the indicators went oversold. The only time besides pre-market it went oversold, and that's when I got out of that trade. Again, the live trade will be in the description to check out me, 1700 red, 2 grand red, 3 grand red. And then I kept cutting the video because we were sitting here for hours and I didn't want a 2-hour long video of me sitting here holding through the red. Cut it all the way back down to the green. And you see, I just held that whole contract mess back and forth between 4 contracts to 13, or 4 contracts to 12, 4 contracts to 10, 4 contracts to 12. I will never max out a PA account. You never do that. There's no YOLO. This was still a completely manageable trade. Just was one of those things that really took high level psychology to get through. So now if we get back over to this 1.6 and come back down to the 100 and panic down, well, so be it. Great at some point in time. But for the indicators on intraday, look at how messy this was. This is just, you can just see the chop. There is no follow through. This huge couple hour consolidation after the 1030 euro close algos, nothing. There's nothing. There's no overhots to play. There's no volume area high lows. There's nothing. There was one tag of a volume area low, which did not get an extension through it. So I like to long and short above and below volume areas. That's the whole scalp stuff, right? That's my bread and butter trading strategy on top of my other 5. We run a couple of them here, but anytime we are extended outside of volume area high, right, we short. And every time we come into volume area low, we long. Right? And on the 1 minute chart, we look for the RSI to be oversold or overbought to help us out, and MAC trend to help us out. Did any of that help today? No. This was an absolute monster of a day to get out green like it did. And like I said, holding through $2,000, $3,000 reds. I've done that. I've held through $55,000 reds on my big account in the options trades, and they've turned all the way back around 20 grand green on Tesla. So, it's not outside of what I'm used to trading. It's not anything normal, but for a PA account where I don't actually have real cushion, because you don't have a 100K account, you kind of got a 3K account there. That was a little bit nerve wracking, but we made her. So with that being said, what are we going to look for the rest? Well, the further push here, it's either going to be 500 or the ES gap. Take your pick out of this garbage consolidation. I took that one trade and I did not trade anything besides the main account here, and those are still red on ES. I'm going to have to roll these out for a little bit and check these out. The big accounts read 727.50. So we are red 727.50 on ES contracts right now. Again, no panic. I'm not going to worry about a few $100. That's, to my account size, is nothing. So we're going to really pay attention to either the gap on the ES or a full-on 500 tag, and then an absolute meltdown because of the psychology of a $500, $100 hole. You know how the market moves in psychology increments: 25, 50, 75, 100. 100 is obviously the biggest one. So 400 to 500, massive psychology difference. So once we get up into here, not only are we coming into like the standard deviation resistance, which is this big yellow line here, 500.30. You're going to be coming into the multi Fibonacci price target right here, which is 423.60 from the after hour algos, right? So let's get into that. You have after hour algos here, goes up to the 423.60. And then you have here 2618 from the opening gap. So we have one Fibonacci box gap here and an algo box here from the 100 to the 0. And those extensions both overlay extension 1 and extension 2, one from the gap open, which means the opening 1 minute candle, wherever the price action opened down to yesterday's close, pointing it to the upside because it will scam up higher, even though the indicators are all saying rollover, death on the MAC, death on the double top RSI, death on seller volume, everything's saying short, so it's going to go long. And that's been the general consensus today. But yeah, that's what we're going to look for. So the only two things left to watch is that magnet to 500, which we've talked about could happen easily. And I'm still going to hold my long-term swings. I have months and months on these things to work out. So I got a lot of long-term swings on Qs, and ES, and we took some profit on the last dump that we called the top of the market. Had a beautiful 2-day red, and still red on these. So again, I'm not going to worry until we're couple thousand red to manage. A few $100 is no big deal to trade manage. So let's get into 500 or the dump back down to ES. It's going to be a surprise ending here because right now the Fed speaks, even being bearish, the market does not care. This is a complete algo manip up. And tune in for the next to see where we come from the 500 or where we come back down to the gap on SPY. And we will assess trades from there. You guys take care.